now in a different link, so hopefully we can share it with our sources. I just published it on below in the chat box. And so let's get started. Welcome everybody to the March meeting of the LA-STIP. I'll share my screen first. So there's a nice screen behind me. Where is it? Oh, so many screens now. Share screen, okay, found. Share. Okay, I hope it's the correct one. Is it working? Yes, I think so. Let me know if it's not. So let me organize here. So let me talk about a little bit about this group, the LA-STIP group. This is a group that started in 2018. A master student from Colombia, Julian Moura, got in contact with Carlota Perez, and from then on, people started to meet every month to talk about experience of science, technology, innovation policy in Latin America. And we do that aiming at learning some lessons from the experience, see what works, what doesn't work, and perhaps deriving some important lessons for future contributions, future experiences. We have to thank SPRU for these, for their help, and also LA-STIP, which is the Latin American chapter of Globalix. You can enter on LA-STIP and find also our tab there, our LA-STIP group tab there with more information about us. Also, all the old material is available there. So the YouTube presentations are there, the slides of the previous participants are there, so you can check it as well. Today, we have the pleasure of having Alejandro Olaya, who is the National Director of Innovation at ANDI, the National Business Association of Colombia. He's also the Regional Director at ANDI Antioquia. He's also the former Director of Consciencias, the National Agency of Science, Technology, Innovation of Colombia, between the period of 2015 and 18. Before I give the word to Alejandro, I don't know if Carlota wants to say a few words about the group as well.
Well, basically that what we're trying to do is to connect academics with the real world. That there is too much academic work that remains in academia, and this makes people actually go straight from their PhD to work in universities only, and very often to write in English and publish in English. So that means that, in fact, the advantages of having people be experts, having doctorates in technology policy does not necessarily translate into very effective technology policies in Latin America. So what we're trying to do is to bring people who have experience in the public sector, so that people might even be attracted to working in the public sector and not only in academia, but at least that they will be connected, that they will keep that connection, and that they will try to help directly the public sector. Today, of course, we have Alejandro, who has been an academic, then moved to being a director of Conciencias, which is the top institution for innovation policy in Colombia, in the public sector, and now he's in the private sector. So he's like a perfect portfolio career person for us to know how you can actually, with the same knowledge, work towards innovation from the different ends. So I think I'm looking forward to today's session because of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlota. So just before I give the word to Alejandro, these are the housekeeping suggestions for us. Please keep your mic off if you're not speaking. And as I said, this presentation is being recorded. It's going to be made available afterwards. It's also live on YouTube right now. If for any unfortunate occasion people start to raid this meeting, we will try to expel them. But if it doesn't work, we'll send another link. It has happened before, but hopefully it won't work. Won't happen now. You can use the chat box not only for making your questions, but also to engage in a side discussion or suggestion references. I suggest you also to start with like I saw it in a presentation a couple of days ago, just writing in capitals like question, and then it will be easier for us to track it. You can write like suggestion or reference and contribute to the discussion as well. And if you want to get in touch with us, here are the ways you can do it. We have two groups on LinkedIn. One, it's the big one, and the one called Connect. I can send you the info on the chat box very soon. And we have one for alumni at Pro IDS IAPP to engage more internally. And we also have like I said, our website on Alix. So if you want to receive our mailing, email us in the first address up here, LA-STIP@gmail.com, and then we will add you to the mailing list. So that's all from my side. So I welcome again Alejandro. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. I'm going to share my screen. Please allow me to share that I can share my presentation.
Let's see. I think you can do it right now then.
Yes, I can share right now. Okay, I think you can see right now.
Yes.
My screen. Okay. Oh, thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Carlota, to invite me today to share with you. And thank you guys to connect from your different countries. And I know for most of you you're going to be at your end of the day. Maybe you'll be a little tired, but it will make it happier if I tell you that in Colombia it's a holiday. And right now I'm in a holiday working is part of the passion that I feel for this topic of science of innovation always. And really, really is a truly honor to share with you and share some experience. I'm going to do this presentation maybe in two main blocks. I think the first part is I'm going to try to explain where I am actually working right now. How is my role in the private sector in a very, some strange, I think, organization, because I'm going to try to explain how the organization works and how many different organizations like the I am in this moment work around the globe. And finally, I'm going to try to give you some tips, some examples, some practical things from the topic that is in the title today, how to contribute to private sector in this policy exercise. Well, a little bit about me. Maybe Carlota mentioned, I am a very lucky guy, I say always. I start my working life in the university. I've been at the university maybe for 10 years. When I was a research and also professor on economics of innovation, I had to change to meet Carlota, to invite her to the university. It was a long time when people go to universities in person to speak. Actually, we're going to speak virtually for many years, I think so. Then I had the chance to be invited to work in government. And then I moved to government, and I've been in government for 7 years. At the beginning, I started in a local government, a regional government. I was the director from Science, Technology, of Innovation of the Antioquia. It's maybe the second largest department in Colombia, but his capital is Medellin, and it's a well-known city from his ecosystem of innovation. It's very dynamic. We have the major companies in that region. We also have an amazing relationship of collaboration to work between academy, business, and government. I think that was the main reason that I can move, or I was invited to join a regional government, and I was in charge of design public policy. It was great for me because I was 10 years in academy, researching about public policy, management of innovation, working in collaboration, sometimes with government, otherwise with business. But I had to move on to stop to say, you must do that to do that. And I was responsible of design many regional innovation policies. And I was the founder of the main user of a very young fund that we have in Colombia, the royalty systems, that there are a new fund to allocate the 10% of the money that the country receives of the mining, oil, gas, to fund R&D and innovation in Colombia. Then I had the chance to move to Conciencias, that is a national level, and I have the responsibility to be the director of Conciencias that actually transferred last year to the Ministry of Science, Technology, of Innovation. And then I had the chance, of course, to propose and to rule many policies at the national level. Lately, many of them thinking about sustainable development goals. It was the Green Book was one of the main products of policy that we have the chance to work in collaboration with SPRU. And I feel very, very proud of that work that we did at that moment in Conciencias. And then I have the chance to move to the private sector, to the business sector. I have been working with them about these last 2 years, and it will be amazing to can share all this knowledge, experience between all these three different worlds. But we're going to be, of course, they are very interconnected, and we have the chance to build a lot from each one of them. When we used to be at the university, we see the world only with the academic eyes. When we move to government, we see a lot of people with a lot of policymakers who only think in the policy design, as well in business. I think we try, and in my call for you, you are young guys, to try to move, try to work with government, try to work with a company, but never forget the academy. I always be linked to academy. I still teach sometimes or giving some conference, because we have a lot to learn from these wars. Actually, as Artur mentioned to you, I work for the ANDI, is the National Business Association of Colombia. I have then 2 roles. I'm the National Director of Innovation for the whole country, but I live in Medellin and I'm located in Antioquia. I'm also, and as well, the Regional Director for all ANDI in Antioquia. ANDI, as his name says, is a national organization, is a private organization, who his main purpose is to represent the private sector interest. And we say that word interest is not economic interest, it's more the interest that they have in the development of the region, and institution, economic, legally, social, environmental. They want to be part of the conversation. They want to be another voice, but an organized voice. In many countries, I think in most of the countries that we have a free market systems, companies has this kind of organization, business association, business organizations that group the main companies of the country, to work together and can propose things to national, to regional governments, or to the society in general in a more structured way. ANDI is a non-profit organization. We are founded with the donations, with the monetary approach of the companies, of the main companies of Colombia, trying to be not dependent of the public budgets, because it restricts our autonomy when we have to comment and talk about any different policies. This organization is an old one. It's 76 years old. It was founded. In fact, was founded in Medellin, in Antioquia. At that time, Medellin was the main industrial city in Colombia. Actually, the second one. Bogota, the capital of Colombia, is the first one. But we still have a very iconic and very traditional companies from the economic structure of the country. We only have 1,500 members. I think only because when you see thousands and thousands of companies that we have in Colombia, this is maybe a small group, I say, but it's very diverse. But the main characteristic is they are a big and medium-sized company. And the companies who found this organization represent around the 55% of the national GDP. They had a real impact when we say something to the policymakers, when we're trying to have a conversation with regional governments, with other companies, because we have a major representation of the economic activity. Of course, the organization is based on work with different sectors, of course, with the private sector, with other organizations as ANDI that we have in Colombia and around the world, with the companies themselves, with different companies, with the 1,500 members. We have a deeply conversation and work inside each of these companies around Colombia in different aspects, in different topics. The topic that is my responsibility at the national level is innovation and also entrepreneurship, and we're going to talk about a little bit later. Of course, the relation with the academia, with consultants, with professors, with research that we join, start projects together, and ANDI is part of this platform to do that. With international community, I'm going to mention in this presentation a couple of global landscapes that we work together with other organizations. Of course, the civil society, and organized and not organized, and with the public sector. One of the main things that this kind of organization do is to have a permanent conversation with public sector, with policymakers of different areas, trying to inform them with information to be better quality policy design. We have a main purpose in our country. We believe, and we was created to promote the country's economic and social environmental development. And we believe deeply in this system which is based in a participatory democracy. It is very important actually in our country, in the region. We can see how this principle of to have a participatory democracy is in great dangers in around the world in many countries, and we believe that is the base of our economic and social system in Colombia, and we are created as well to be part of this conversation. And we defend and we believe in the free enterprise and the competitiveness, of course, as well. The ANDI, this is maybe, it will be more familiar for people who live in Colombia, but what you see in this slide is the name of different organizations like hospitals, like universities, like social foundations, like that will be created from this organization for ANDI. We are very proud in ANDI that we are this platform from the last 76 years in different moments of the country, in different moments in the region. We see different, or we see the opportunity to create new institutions. And at that point, businessmen, private sector, they join together and they give in resources, they give in donations, and as well the time and the knowledge to create a lot of very important institutions in Colombia, like the University of LA-STIP, or maybe the El SENAR is the National Learning Service for trained skills and employees, hospitals. We are more than the representation of the businessman. We are also a platform to create a new and a permanent change institutional architecture. We have a strategic plan in the organization, who is based basically in 5 main topics. The first one, we call it enterprise and society, and it's all this relation with the private sector, with the business sector, with society in general, which is the role of companies in society, how we promote employment, the development, not only the economic development, but as well the development of the main groups of interest of the companies. This is one of these 5 pillars that we work. We have for each one a group of people, expert of each topic, who have the responsibility to develop or to deploy that topic in Colombia, in general, in all the country, with the companies who belong to the organization. The second one is related with sustainability. Of course, we know that all the companies have a lot of pressure to move faster than they usually do to sustainability, understand this equilibrium between his economic activity, the protection of the environment, but as well the development of the social group or their impact the society. And we have a whole group of people working in this transition to join companies to sustainability. The third one is competitiveness and internationalization. Of course, that we need that each day the companies who develop the organization be more competitive, can survive in time, can face new markets, and go globally, because our economy in Colombia is partially globalized. I say that we have companies around the world in Colombia, most of the companies, but Colombian companies are very shy when they go globally. We have in some sectors, in some specific companies, but it's not the main factor that you find that all companies in Colombia has as well international operations. Legal security and regulatory simplification in Latin American, and in general, I can say we have very, very complex regulatory frameworks. Our regulatories, our congressmen, and our policymakers, we are believing that companies and society in general is going to be to do bad things, and all the regulatory framework is trying to prohibit some kind of behaviors. And sometimes for business, that's not good, because everything is very restricted, very controlled, and we try to have rules more simple. And finally, the last topic is digital transformation, innovation, and entrepreneurship. That is the topic that is my responsibility, and it's how we work with the companies to move on faster to this digital transformation, to be more innovative, his competition is based on innovation and create new value. And of course, entrepreneurship, we believe, and we want to get more guys and more people be entrepreneurs, create new companies, and we have a more competitive ecosystem in the country. This is our strategic plan. These are the main aspects that we work. We are located in 12 regions in Colombia, basically in all the country. We have 10 different interdisciplinary areas to work with the companies, and 30 different sectorial chambers. I mentioned at the beginning that we have a representation basically in all the Colombian territory, and we have companies from all different sectors of the economy. And to can have a specific conversation of each sector, we have a specific space that we call chamber. And we have a chamber for each one of the different sectors of the economy, but not also the economy, from the companies that we represent, from automotive, beverage, feed, food, to medical device, pharmaceutical, industrial and medical gases. And that is one of the main characteristics of this organization, that we have experts for all the different sectors of economic activity in Colombia, for all the different problems that companies have. Because maybe many times when we are in the academic, as well in the public sector, doing public policy, we're trying to think that the old companies behave very similar between sectors. We're trying to create theories, create models, create conclusions that works generally for all companies, theoretical. But when you are in the practice, when you are working with companies, when you are having conversation with the presidents, with the people inside the companies, is different. The way that they innove in automotive, that they do in medical devices, or maybe in healthcare. There are a lot difference, not only in the size of the companies. That is a framework very used when we design policy for big companies, policy for medium-sized companies, but find public policy, build a specific with the characteristic of the innovation process of each economic sector individually is not the common pattern in Colombia, and I think as well in Latin America. And that is one of the big opportunities that we have in this organization, that is have experts and have companies, all the different sectors. And when we're trying to create things, we try to do it very differentiated, in a very specific way for each sector of different companies. Of course, to work with companies around the country and different economic areas, we need a transversal, interdisciplinary areas who are related to the main topics: legal affairs, economic development and competitiveness, sustainable development. We have people expert on each topic who work with different companies. That gives us a lot of the opportunity to create or to have some services, I say, or some products. Of course, the main one is the representation and advocacy of the companies, be the voice of the private sector, be the voice of the specific sectors in conversation with the policymakers, with the regional governments, with national governments, but as well an international level in all the different grounds like academia, or maybe with other companies. Information analysis, we have the chance, the opportunity to capture a lot of information. We do a lot of studies in companies, we capture a lot of information. They answer a lot of surveys that we ask to companies from many different topics, and we create a very fresh information, what is really happening on companies in real time. Sometimes with this pandemic and COVID, things like how much money companies have to pay the salaries in some specific moment where we have to close all the active economy. We have like a thermometer to can check how many days companies can survive with everything closed, 35, 36 days. And we share that information to regional governments, to national government, in order to they can develop more or less strict quarantines at the regional or at the regional level. That's only one example to cite one of the possibilities that we have. We do as well in innovation. We have a very specific study and information about innovation. Later, I'm going to mention about that. But we have this chance to capture all this information from private sector. Consultancy as well inside the companies, international representation, and something very, very important that this kind of organization do. We are as well a business relationship. We are not a commercial organization, as I mentioned, but we are a trust space in which different companies, different leaders of companies has the opportunity to meet each other, to have conversation, But we try to mix these spaces as well with academics and with policymakers to enrich the conversation in different topics. Well, that was very quickly the kind of organization who is ANDI, this national association who I'm working these last 2 years. And from that, we're trying to give you some insights about the question that joins today this conversation, how it can contribute from the private sector to public policy design. I think the first one definitely had to be with the possibility to be the representative of the businessman. This kind of organization like ANDI and many other ones like ANDI around the world who have in different countries, we understand for this conversation that I mentioned in specific topics with the companies, in deep survey sometimes, another one in deep capture information from day-to-day interaction with companies, particularities, specific issues who are important, not only for the companies, to interchange with the policy makers when they trying to develop or avoid different policy problems or policy matters in the policy documents. For example, we participate or we join different national councils, as you know, in Latin America and all the science and an innovation system around the world. We use a lot of councils, spaces we can interact with the policymakers. In Colombia, we have some who are really, really important for companies, like the National Council from Science, Technology, and Innovation Tax Incentives. Maybe 80% of all the private innovation activity is founded with tax incentives. Companies put the money, but then they can discount from the taxes that they pay to the government. And it's the main source of funding of innovation in Colombia. And I think around the world, when you see the studies of OECD, you see that most of the private sector, the money that they founded, they go them and discount them from tax incentives are very, very powerful. In that space, Andy, we are the responsible to be the voice of the private sector, to design national policies with tax incentives. And it's very, very interesting because always, of course, government, the Ministry of taxes, who manage taxes, they always want to reduce the tax incentives. And of course, companies always want to be more, they be big tax incentives for the activity. And we are in the middle trying to share some studies and why they are good and what sometimes they don't have to reduce them, or maybe why can reduce them. And we have information from different sectors, how in specific sectors the tax incentives are really a good tool, or maybe another one is not too much. And we help to the public policies to design better tax incentives, initiatives, or tools. And as well, this council are the responsibility in Colombia. Companies have to present like a project. They can't just deduce the investment in STI from the tax. They have to declare before in a project. And this council started the project and approved them. And we also be part of this group. We'll also be part of the technical committee from Science, Technology, and Innovation. It's a national government group of experts to design the national policy from science and innovation. And Andy is the only representative for private sector in this group. And it's very important because we have the chance to give information, to interchange different aspects, different point of view of the conversation to the policy design. And finally, we also be part at the regional level in Colombia. We have like these same councils, but at the regional level, and they have the responsibility to prioritize and allocate the investment in royalty systems. As I mentioned, in Colombia, we have a new fund that is the royalty system, and we have the 10% of all the royalties. that the country receive for mining, gold, they are invest in science and technology. And regional, that is a regional level, they have the chance to decide which are the main topics, what are the prioritized topics that you need, not only for research, but as well to companies, to innovation in companies. We be part of this group of conversation. I think the second one, or the second possibility that we have to contribute to the public policy design will be as well as the capability that these organizations have to join companies of different size, of different sectors. We have entrepreneurs, we also have medium-sized company, but we have as well the biggest companies in the country. And with that possibility, we can explore what is good for corporate innovation, and we can as well with them develop some standards for a specific topic. We're talking about today around innovation. That is the topic that I have the responsibility, and we try with the company, we have the possibility with the companies from this platform that is the ANDI organization, to create specific methodologies to benchmark innovation with companies around the world. We have the possibility, and in fact we do, to capture data from the innovation process to create or to improve the innovation in companies. We specifically have a ranking of innovation. It was created like maybe 5 years ago, and we do it in association with the main economic magazine in Colombia, who's called the Revista Dinero. Is the major circulation magazine in Colombia, and once a year they have a specific number only dedicated to the innovation ranking. We build this measure from companies, and I think this is the main measure that we have in Colombia for innovation, because we have the measure that the national statistics, the public agency do for measure innovation, but it's a tricky one because there are statistic representative, and they have companies from many different sizes, and the majority of the companies who answer the survey of the national, the public national agency, they do not innovate. Like 80% do not innovate, and only 20% of the companies innovate. And most of the information that we have from that is information related with companies who do not innovate. Everything is bad when you see that study. Here we focus only in companies who innovate. Maybe it's not a very scientific approach, because it's in that way it's not statistical representative, but is representative for the companies who innovate, only participate in this ranking innovative companies. And we have the chance to understand a little better more how companies innovate in Colombia, companies who are innovating. We measure the innovation, we interchange information with the companies, we create this special issue from this Dinero magazine. We do a lot of noise in the country, a big event, we give you awards, they go to media, and it's good because cultural, every one of you knows that we need to put companies who do good job in innovation as a reference for other companies. In countries like Colombia, in countries like Latin America, that with innovation is very incremental, they're not strategic in the majority of companies. They do few investment, and we need to expose a lot of companies who do very well. Of course, all these have a methodology. Maybe another occasion we can talk about then, but it's based in the methodologies and in the recommendations that OECD do in the Oslo Manual and other adaptations that we have in Colombia with the national statistics, because the idea is we measure similar dimension, similar variables. I'm sorry, this slide is in Spanish, but we try to measure the three main things: the conditions to innovate, how is the strategy, the culture, and how is the alignment of the innovation process with the main goals of the company. We measure the capabilities, the structure, how are the groups, how many people they have in innovation process, how the money that they invest in innovation, how many products they have. And the third one is the results, of course, how many new products the companies launch, how many new process, what is the revenue for innovation, how many employees they generate from innovation, how they link innovation product and process with the 2030 agenda, the SDGs, how they incorporate new technologies. All these variables are measured. Some of them are quantitative, another one are qualitative, and the ideal behavior is 100 points. This is the major scale, and we have different punctuation for that. And with that score, we create the ranking, and this is the ranking we publish with the top 30 most innovative companies in Colombia. And companies feel very good when they are in this ranking. They have internal goals to be part of the ranking, to move on positions, and the managers of innovation in companies, part of his work is measured for the behavior that they have in the ranking. But most of the ranking, because all of the rankings has good and bad things, with that information, we use them a lot to inform public policy. We create a kind of report with the information of the survey, and all in these councils and advice platform that we are invited as private sector, we all with the information that we're given. It's not because Alejandro Olaya think that the public policy must be in one way or in another way. It's from information that we capture with companies, that managers of innovation, that CEOs of the companies, that we have from them, and try to translate that scores, to translate the ranking into recommendations for policymakers in innovation. And we have a success in that purpose, because sometimes recommendations that we give to the public policymakers, they are incorporated in laws, in regulation, in instruments of the National Agency of Science, Colciencias, actually the Ministry of Science. And it's a very useful tool that we have, and it's an example of how we can do it. We develop, in fact, all the different programs, because another way that we think that we can contribute to this public policy design is because we have different studies, different surveys around the world, international, that sometimes for companies, they prefer to work together in organizations as Andy, as organization created for them, to collaborate in these organizations that outside of them, maybe with national agencies or local agencies, or maybe with other companies or consultancies. And we have this possibility to call companies, and they respond to our calls. In the last years, we developed a program. We joined with Ruta N. This is the local public agency from innovation in Medellin, who maybe has this problem to call companies. And we joined with Andy, and we developed a specific program we call in Espanol Plan Padrino. It's like The Godfather, sounds very different like the movie, but it's like a mentorage, like it's more like a mentoring program. One company who have some achieve in innovation, who have some level of maturity of innovation, join or give a mentoring with a methodology developed together with Ruta N and Andy, to be a structure with some products, with some methodologies to do this mentoring. And companies are very likely to collaborate with a big company, or with a medium-sized company, or a company who has more trajectory in innovation process, when a company who is just starting in a platform like that. in this organization like Andy, in this space, that they feel more comfortable, they feel that we talk in an organization like Andy, a language more near to the innovation business than maybe than a language that sometimes they find in academia or in the public agencies. Sometimes they don't want to work with public agencies because they feel very complicated, difficult to access, a different narrative. And we have the chance to build here a new narrative that, of course, is good in the policy design, because finally, like this example, we help a public agency and we work together, and it's good for everyone. It's good for the public, for the local agency, it's good as well for the companies who work in Andy, and of course, it's good as well for Andy as organization in order to promote this objective that we have, that companies in Colombia be more innovative, be more competitive through innovative, and have a better innovation process each day, of course.
Alejandro, you got yourself without a camera. I don't know how it happened.
Okay, no, it was my fault. I doing click here in the slide, I stopped my camera. Okay, and I think finally another landscape in which we can do a lot is in international landscape, definitely. You know that Colombia access to OECD 2 years ago. In fact, when I was working in Conciencias, I was the chief of the delegation of Colombia for the chapter of science, technology, of innovation. And I have to present all this chapter in the OECD for Colombia in the accessing process. And finally, Colombia we do that for 32 different committees. I was in charge of the Science, Technology, and Innovation Committee. And finally, we have the final conclusion that Colombia was accepted at the OECD. And as you know, OECD is a space for design for a national level. We only go to the OECD, or the people who are invited to the OECD are the ministers or the directors of the department. At the moment, I was director in Conciencias, and it's a platform to talk about best practices with policymakers to intercheck experience. And it's a very, very helpful space, and very, very different conversations that we have in private sector. But like a mirror of the OECD is an organization that is called Business at OECD. And it's the same of the OECD, but only for the private sector, for the business sector. In this case, Andy, the organization that I actually work in right now, is the representative of Colombia business and private sector in the Business at OECD. You only can, of course, enroll in Business at OECD when your country is part of the OECD. And actually, we are a part of this Business at OECD. And Business at OECD is a global network, because they join organizations like Andy, sometimes company individually around the world of the countries who are part of the OECD. They represent over 7 million of companies of all different sizes. It's a huge platform. It's a huge organization to link the conversation of the private sector with the policy makers, or with the policy discussion at the OECD level, of course. Business at OECD is an institution who is recognized, who is trusted partner of the OECD, and other institutions at international level, like the BID or World Bank, who are working in public policies. The same thing that happened at the national level when Andy be part of the conversation with the public sector to give them recommendations or to discuss public policy. That same scheme is happening at the international level with Business at OECD. And we have this tremendous opportunity to be, not only to be part of the conversation, but as well to to give the difference of the Latin America companies at the space at the OECD. You know, OECD is for for developed countries, as we know, rich countries that they have, of course, very competitive competitiveness enterprises, and we have the change. Like countries from Colombia or all the Latin American members of OECD, like Mexico, Chile, to be part of this conversation and the kind of recommendation, the kind of policy, trying to capture the different behaviors that Latin American companies have, the particularities of our markets and our state of development to be in fact of that. Business OECD represents more that is founded like 50 years ago. And well, and finally, you know that OECD, they work in working papers, they develop working papers who are shared in between the members at the national level. They share to us in the platform of Business OECD the same documents that are in the discussion process at the OECD in order to the private sector can give their feedback, their ideas in these policy documents that I developed. They work very similar at the OECD. They have the mirror committee, and of course, I am part at this moment of the committee from Science, Technology, of Innovation in Business at OECD, and we receive all this information, documents, and we have to change to give a recommendation in the name and the voice of the Colombian business sector, private sector in the business. As you well, we have the chance to cooperate in many different areas. I think with the question who guide this conversation, how we can give some information, a different point of view for the private sector from to the public policy design. I think it's not only from private sector, of course. We we have clear that we can and we need, and it's imperative that we expand our knowledge in public policy of innovation and innovation management, doing more effort to link the conversation between academy, government, business, and society. We have the tremendous responsibility when we are in some of these sectors, when we are professors, when we are researchers. We have the tremendous responsibility to not only see the world as academic. We have the responsibility to try as well to see, or at least to open our mind and open the possibility to hear how governments see the world. When I say the world, maybe I mean not only the in general world, the world of innovation, but as well we have the responsibility to open to the businessman, to the private sector, but as well as the society. And it's maybe the main message that I want to give you, all of you who are in your research process, you are in your formation process, although who are practitioners or are policy makers. We have to develop more instruments, formal, to link these different points of view. And as I mentioned at the beginning, try to move from one world to another. Maybe I think it's not easy, but we can do it in different, not always working, not always as employee or the specific sector, but maybe with collaboration, sometimes with a friendship, with a partner in a project. This is very, very, very important for the future of the public policy, for the future of the pertinence and on the approach on science, technology, innovation, in order to these main challenges that we have as society, as a world, and the responsibility with this field of study, that to be always relevant, to be always in the frontier of the knowledge, doing this linkage. Well, I think it was the ending, that the things that I want to share. I would like in this part to open to reactions, to questions, to anything you want, because I think it would be maybe a very important part of this conversation. I want to start to share to see your faces, because when you are presented, you don't see anyone. And okay, and I don't know, Arthur, if you moderate or who want to start.
Yeah. Yes, thanks a lot, Alejandro. That was a really nice presentation, and we already have some comments and questions. And I first would like to take the opportunity to apologize for the people on YouTube, because I made a little bit of a mess in the beginning, but I think now it's fixed. And it's good to know that they are there, because the first question comes from them. It's about, I'll read it for you, Alejandro. How are the ODS incorporated in the metrics of the innovation ranking?
Yeah, very, I like that question, because, well, a big part of my job when I was in public sector in Conciencias was to trying to develop something related with SDGs. And I start to do the same thing in this innovation ranking. We have in the survey, we have a chapter of the survey that we ask to the companies, what is the main, or how is the purpose, or what kind of problems expressed of the SDG agenda is innovations result, or trying to do some apportation to the solution. And we do some kind of matrix to relay SDGs and innovation. And companies declare. It's more a declaration from the companies. We don't do a specific auditory that to be very sure, but we start to introduce this kind of question in this innovation ranking. My idea and with my team is to start to develop with more precision, maybe to capture more in a qualitative way the kind of innovation that they're doing. But I think the good news is we find that the majority of the companies actually in this ranking of innovation in Colombia, when you see the results 5 years ago, the main purpose for innovation from the companies were related with productivity, with competitiveness, with reduction of costs of materials. They right now, the main purpose of innovation of the majority of the companies, they asking what kind of actual problems of society they can apport in part of solution. This is the main narrative that we find. I think it's good because we are seeing a transition. As I mentioned, this is a ranking. We only work with 500 companies of Colombia, the main companies. And maybe it's not a statistical representative, but it gives you a very important insight. The big companies, the main companies of Colombia, what they are thinking about the innovation and the future of innovation in these companies.
Thank you. We have questions in the chat. Just for clarification, you can write your names or write your questions directly there. So the first question is from Amanda. I'll let her ask it directly to you.
Thank you, Artur. Thank you, Alejandro, for the presentation. It has been very informative so far. And my question for you, it's connected to a little bit of what Carlota mentioned in the beginning of not necessarily academic knowledge to overflow to public policy. So I would like to know from your practice, and if you have had any situations like that, where when you come with ideas that were nurtured in academia and that you know better the validity and things like that, if you have faced any contradictions in the public sector or in the business, but from people that not necessarily come from science and technology studies background. Not sure if my question is quite clear, but just to try to understand how academia and practice knowledge from practitioners can sometimes conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. No, it's a great question. I think we don't have an answer of that because, in fact, it's a problem. I can see it when I was working in the past in different organizations. We try to stereotype the way academics think when we are in public policy design in the government sector. And when we are in the public sector, we try to stereotypize the people who are working in businessman or in the private sector. Definitely, I think when we are in academia, we have a way to think in academia. We have a way to see the problems in academia. We have a narratives in academia. We have a methods in academia who are just different. I don't want to see who are better or not better that we have in business sector. They are different. When you are in business sector, the narrative is different. The methods are different. Sometimes they are very practical. They have the pressure of the market to do things quick. They don't have 5 years to study a problem as we have in the academia world. They have to do it in 1 week, 2 weeks. They have to decide. They have to move on. And I don't think that that's better or worse. They're just different. And when we want to have a fluid cooperation, when you are in the academia and you will have to have a fluid cooperation with a business sector, you have to understand that, and you have to do an additional effort, not only in where you are good, that is your academic behavior, your academic background, they're stronger in the method. You have to know that they have a different expectation in times and methodologies and narratives, and we have to do this effort. But as well from the business sectors, when I work with them, I say, okay, this is academia, they go more slow, they need more information, they need to think deeply, you have to be more patient. And my work in this point, I think, is more to be like a consigliere, like an ambassador, trying to join two different works. And the thing is, most work when you talk about public policies, design, people in the government, because sometimes people in the government, they stay only 1 year, only 2 years, and they want to change the world in only 1 year, and they have this, we call the complex of Adam. They think everything had to be built from zero when they come, and nothing was done in the past, and the future is not going to exist. They have to do everything from new, and it's different. And I do it actually because I have a little bit of academic in my mindset, a little bit of public government design, but as well of the companies. It's trying to be in the middle. I think we have many opportunities, but it's a huge challenges as well to create this convergence between the three worlds.
Thank you, Alejandro. Carlota, would you like to say your question yourself? Or your mic's off.
You know, Carlota, the new definition of 1 second is what people trying to say, you have your mic off.
I didn't get that. Sorry. Anyway, I was wondering if you could provide at least one example of actual influence of your organization on public innovation policy. Have you been in a situation where you could actually make a difference? How long have you been in this? 2 years?
2 years. 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have a couple of mine. Maybe I think the last one I mentioned that in Colombia, tax incentives are a very powerful tool for the financing of business sector. At least 80% of all the resources who companies use for funding innovation are his own resources, but then they discount them from taxes. That finally is public money. In Colombia, we have an instrument which originally was not designed for science of innovation, that we call obras por impuestos is the name on Spanish. It's like when a government has to do a public road or a public school, a public something in a very marginal region, they try to avoid corruption when they give money to local regional mayors or regional governors, and they allow the opportunity to companies who are in remote zones to develop that public infrastructure, and they discount from taxes. And that instrument works very well because companies do it at the the exact cost because they don't want to, they can lose money. They do it in a very short time. And we proposed that this scheme was used from science, technology, innovation. We call STI, I don't know the specific word, but STI obras from taxes. Maybe a company in a collaboration with university, with R&D center, can build or develop this new facility that public budget don't want to do. This laboratory or this new building from science, and then companies can deduce from taxes. That proposal was a theme for us, was for a group of companies who participate to join the ANDI. And we proposed to the national government this new policy instrument. And actually, in Colombia, the actual government is developing a review of all the tax incentives at the national levels and introduce this new possibility. It had to be a national government say, I like it, we want to do it. And now is in a national policy document, and we're going to chance maybe in the second semester of this year to start to implement it with companies. That is one example of the kind of things that we have the chance to do from the perspective of private sector who say, I do that, I do it well. What if we ask the government to let us to do it in other different sectors, in this case, innovation? And this may be a good example.
Thank you. Next one is Rafael. Would you like to open your mic, or should I do your question? All right.
It's okay. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's very relevant to understand how this actor, as Andy, works as a kind of glue of different of firms and how policies can be created from the private sector. And in this context, I was wondering, and I think this is very close to Amanda's question, what are your thoughts or your experience with dealing with different and not often differing incentives when you're working with the private sector, with different companies, and also with the public sector and academia? You have very different incentives at the moment of creating policy. So what's your experience in dealing with that? And I think you mentioned it before, that it's the political cycle is very relevant here, but I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Rafael. Well, I think when you are in the academia, of course, you have a more broad vision. You're trying to understand, as you say, the whole cycle of policy design. And I think you can see better from the beginning, from establish the necessity, until maybe to do some measure to evaluation impact, to understand if some policy has the effect who you are trying to reach. This is when you are in academic. Maybe when you are in the government, you don't have time to wait until the impact, to measure the impact. And the things that I find when I arrive to the government is that I think maybe 80–90% of all the public policy instruments for innovation in Colombia, they don't have any evaluation of impact. They don't really know about the impact. Just the policymaker just think it was sounds logic, otherwise sounds cool, that kind of policy instrument, they just design it. They have the budget, and I say, I want to put some kind of money in this policy instrument. Many of them, as mentioned, they don't have evaluation impact, but they don't have as well a good understanding of the nature of the problem. One of the things that I developed when I was in Colciencias was something very basic that we call it was like a kind of format to develop the instrument. And people who have budget and who have the responsibility to develop instruments. They have to describe as well what is the problem. They have to give you an order of magnitude of the problem. They have to do an international benchmark of different policy instruments that we have. But you're going to sound funny. They have to go in the history of the institution what they did in the past, because sometimes we find that in the past other people tried that, but it doesn't work. But 10 years later, a new guy say, I have a great idea to do that. They say, we did that 10 years ago, and it didn't work. And with only that small document, I think it was good because we had the change that people reflect a little bit. And sometimes they say, okay, we don't going to do that because we find that 10 years ago, it was not a good idea, or maybe the problem is this different problem. I think that's what happened in the public. And of course, when you are in the business sector, of course, companies have a big pressure to survive in time. And of course, innovation in companies is a way that how they can reach a major objective in company to survive in the time. And of course, the major rationality and innovation that we find in companies is how they can achieve these goals, sometimes of reducing costs, or materials, of energy, or explore a new market through the innovation. And they have a lot of pressure in doing quickly and doing fast. Sometimes it could be similar that things that happen in the public policy, that they don't explore in a sufficient way the opportunity of to innovate. I think that there are different problems, different because there are different kinds of behavior, and you say there are different incentives that they want to innovate. But then I think, of course, all have this understanding. I think is good that innovation is a key tool. Is a key tool in order to develop social when you are in government, a key tool in a whole way when you are in academia, and a key tool for economic when you are in business. I think that some of the things I can capture, of course, very imprecise because it's only my perception, but it's something that I can share.
Thank you, Alejandro. Now we have a question from Juan Franco.
Hello, Alejandro. I would like to ask you two quick questions. The first one is like when you mentioned that branding measures the level of collaboration from a company between other companies in the sector or between other actors in the sector for your ranking. I would like to know how that collaboration is measured. And the second one is more related to the mindset of traditional managers, because I'm from Medellin as well. I work for one of the big firms there, and I'm studying a master in science and technology policy at the SPRU. And when I had the project of coming here, it was so difficult for me to make the managers to understand that a master's in science and technology policy, especially with that word policy in the name, could be insightful in the future for the firm. So they used to ask me like, why not management? Why not something financial because it's a financial company? Or why not analytics because it's something that is super like on the top now? And it was so hard to explain to the managers the value of this kind of a study. So how do you change the mindset of the traditional manager and to tell him that the things that we do on academia, the tools, the methodologies could be adopted and used in the entrepreneurial world? Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. It's a very interesting question. The first one that you asked related with how we measure this collaboration. We try to reduce at project level. What measure them is of the projects that company have in order to develop a product, process, innovation. How much of them they do it in collaboration with other organizations, other companies, or universities, or R&D centers. And they have some formula to relativize them in order to the number of innovation, of the number of the projects, of the number of the cooperations, or the parts to cooperate in projects. And with that, they create a score for this variable. They give you a number from 1 to 10. This is a simplified way to that. And the second one, well, you have a point. I think is that you describe is related with the Rafael question, the different mindset that people have in the role. When you have a role, the role changes in some part of your mindset. And when you are a company, you are a manager of a company, the human resources manager. And some guy say, I'm going to study innovation policy. And she say, okay, we're going to form him to go to work to the university or maybe to the government, not in this company. And he asked you to only study management and innovation because maybe you're going to be more useful for the company in the field of management or innovation. You described the typical problem that we have and the responsibility that we have on all each in our level to have this conversation, to say that we need this interdisciplinary connection and these interdisciplinary boundaries of knowledge will be good for companies. Eventually it will be for public policy design and also for academia. As at the beginning of this conference, I was talking with Carlota, we have 10 years talking about virtuality in the academia, in academic world, but we never did it. We always going to the conference in person to only talk for 1 hour, but with the pandemic, we start to do it. I feel something like that when we talk about interdisciplinarity. We talk a lot about that, but when you go into the practice, each one is in his world and don't want to hear the other one. I think it's the challenge, and I think it's the thing that we have in mind, in our hands, and we have to work on that.
Thank you, Alejandro. Related to that, I'll just skip a few questions just because of the time. I'll of course come back to them. I'll just add to the same topic. Someone asked about the theories, the theoretical, your theoretical background, your academic background. How do you utilize it in your experience? I'll read the question. From your experience, can you share with us some theoretical ideas and frameworks that you have found helpful during your experience at Consciências and now at Andy?
Okay, I am economist on my basic formation, and then I do my PhD on economics and management, and my work on my PhD thesis was on economic of innovation, and I had the chance to work at UPV University for 10 years, teaching science and management of innovation, policy of innovation. Then of course, I learned a lot, and I had a lot of questions, and all that I learned in that time in academia, and that I'm still learning today, I always have with me, as when you learn to mountain bike, and you always, something that you learn, you always have it, and you use it when you need to use it. And of course, I think that the most relevant thing that when you learn in your PhD, I think is the capability you learn by yourself, to always be researching, learning. I think for me, it was the most relevant thing that I learned. And I always be in my permanent research process, exploring ideas, concepts, trying to link things between all this work that I have to change to move, and never forget each one of these words. I think when I'm working with businessman and company, to sometimes tend to do the things very quickly, I say we have to research a little bit. But when we are with researchers that they want research a lot of time, we say we're going to more quick. And we are with public policy that they want to do everything for new. I ask them, they go to the past and look what we have in the past. I think I always have all these words in my mind, and it works for me.
Thank you. We have one question now from Melina, and I'll take the opportunity also to start making two at a time. There's one from YouTube. It's in Spanish. ¿Cómo se está relacionando el sector empresarial con el desarrollo de políticas de IDI con enfoque transformativo, segundo el libro verde escrito por usted? Y Melina, por favor.
Bueno.
First of all, Alejandro, thank you so much for this brilliant presentation. I'm very excited about what I heard. At some point in your talk, you mentioned that you somehow try to be a voice for the business sector in policy processes. I think that's really relevant, but my question is, how do you manage to represent evenly like different firms and different sectors in these processes? Because we're talking about a very heterogeneous body of or a very heterogeneous collective. And how do you make sure that you're not over-representing the more powerful in these processes? Thanks.
Melina, amazing question, because I think it's the most difficult part to work in an organization like Andy around the world, who are business organization. I think we have to have in my maybe three teams. You have to talk with all your companies that you represent. When I start to work in Andy, I put in my agenda that I want to start to visit each one of the companies who I represent, to know installations, the people that they work, the kind of sector that they do. Of course, I had to stop with the pandemic, but I still doing interviews virtually with the companies. I think it's the first thing, because you tend only to have conversations with 10, 12, the more active that you have in your board, there you are your bosses, and maybe you can fall in what you mean, the over-representate only a small group. I think the first one is to know each one, and I'm in the process. I think the second one is a political feeling, in the way that you are the voice of them, but sometimes or most of the times, not all of them is going to agree with you, because no one in any topic in the world you find a 100 consensus. You have to be developed, and as well I'm in this process to develop this ability to identify in which themes, in which topics I have the maximum of consents, that I feel that it's a general feeling in companies to put a specific topic in the conversation. When I feel that we don't have a majority of consensus, or maybe we have 4 or 5 different deep blocks in controversy, I just wait and I say we don't have the chance to be a good representative of the topic. I think it will be the second one. And I think the third one, that maybe is more risky and more problematic. Sometimes I feel that you have the responsibility. You see things that maybe you know that you have to move on in that direction, maybe link it with the question of the old SDG, with the Green Book. And maybe there are things that are not so clear actually for businessman, and you have to start to change the risk and say, I'm going to talk about that, and someone call, why are you talking about that? Because that, I think that, I believe that, and sometimes you say, okay, or they say, no, go slow, we don't go too fast in that direction. But I think it's maybe for me the 3 things in order to that. And linking with the question of the Green Book, I think it's something that I miss, maybe we have to develop more in this approach of transformative innovation. It's something that I talk in that moment with Johan and with Matthias and everyone. I think because it was something new, it was very at the level of academic background, like evolution of the theories of innovation. Maybe when we working as the public agency, it was new, and we do a lot and the tools and the approach to be novelty in the policy design, but we have a miss. We lack for tools for business, for innovation. And I think I had the chance actually to maybe to continue exploring that line of work and how to traduce maybe these concepts of transformative innovation, because I say traduce because when you I'm a manager of a company, in fact, a leader of innovation companies, they see that a lot of theoretical, when how I use that in my day-by-day innovation process in this company. And we have a lot of something to develop, to linking all these methods, theories, to the day-by-day innovation pressure that people in companies have.
Excellent. Thank you, Alejandro. Also now 2 questions. First one from Matthias and then from Andrea. So Matthias, if you want to open your mic.
Hi, everyone. I don't come from this kind of world, come from more a scientific world. I'm doing my master and PhD here at Imperial, and I'm trying to kind of learn a little bit more of this world. I've been reading the work of Mariana Mazzucato, so that's all I know. But from that background, I wanted to ask you, you have mentioned 3 big nodes that you kind of align, government, private, and academia. You have mentioned that you kind of interact with them and form new links between those nodes. How would you summarize your kind of conversation that you have in one of those conferences that you mentioned when you try to approach different people? So when you coming from the private and going to academia, from a person there, do you use the business language or the academic language, or how would you summarize one of those conversations?
Thanks.
Well,
sorry, Alejandro, I'll just allow Andrea Padilla to ask you as well, so we don't run out of time. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Arthur. I'll be quick. I know we don't have a lot of time. Thank you, Alejandro, for your presentation. I'm also from Colombia, so it's really nice to hear about things going on in your own country while you're also studying these sort of issues. So my question is a bit linked with Melina's in the terms of how to challenge a little bit the traditional power structures. In terms of how do you get involved with grassroots innovations, incubators or accelerators, or maybe other forms of social movements who might be trying to knock the doors with some disruptive ideas or groups that might be challenging traditional sectors. And we go back to this idea of dealing with a non-homogeneous spectrum of companies. So how do you get them involved into these conversations to open up a bit more of this conversation and be able to listen to some other ideas of these kind of outsiders or people kind of in the border of those lines?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And Matthias. I don't know, Matthias, maybe I don't want to summarize in my personal experience because it's just my personal experience, what happened to me. I think maybe what I see when we say that we have to create connections between these different world, business, society, academia, and each one of them has his own language, his own narrative, his own methods. I think, and when we have to recognize that, and we don't have to ask to the people in academia who have to change his narrative, his methods to approach the private sector. I think the authenticity has to be permanent there. And we have to as well to recognize when we are in the academian side that the guy in the private sector is going to talk different, is going to ask for different times, is going to because his way to that the way to see the world and the problems and the innovation process. I think we have to respect that, and we have to be authentic when we are in each work. It's strange because in my case I had the chance to move to another one but I never, as I mentioned at the beginning, I forgot my past identity, because I feel I still feeling like a university professor, and when I have the chance, I took a course, and when I have the chance, I still working with the policymakers. I think we have to be, and I summarize as you asking me, maybe in authenticity. Never lose this authenticity, but as well respecting the authenticity of the counterpart. And Andrea, I don't know, maybe as you mentioned, there are a lot of different new actors playing in the field of innovation that years before we don't see, and not only the traditional as maybe incubators, but also civil society organized, and the citizens as well. There are things that we have to capture in some sense in this Green Book, in this transformative innovation policy. And I think when you see in the company side, you see some openness to the companies to open a little bit the conversation. And we see when you explore these methodologies of open innovation, that companies want to other people, maybe in universities, maybe in civil society, be part of the innovation process. But I think only be part because I have a problem, you solve it for me, because it's only the reduction approach. I think that the challenge and the opportunity to provoke out more that CEOs and people involved in innovation in companies really move on to another stage of cooperation. But I also think that maybe the solution or the novelty proposals has to be from the academia, because it's the field and we have the chance of create these things or propose new things, because immediativeness in companies is very complex to manage for people who had the responsibility for innovation. Companies don't pay them to explore these new things. They pay to develop new things to maintain company alive in time. And I think the chance is going to be this linkage. And we from academia, from the research field, propose these new ways to cooperate, to collaborate. An organization like I'm in charge right now, how be this bridge to connect both worlds, how we create a space of trust for both of them. I think in some cases, I feel like a psychologist. How we try to hear the promise of both worlds and try to connect there more softly.
Thank you, Alejandro. I'll give the word to João, and we also have
and Carlota, the boss is
Carlota
raising
has a yeah. Well, let's give the word to Carlota because it's Carlota, and then to João. Sorry, João.
Oh, I thought I was mute. Alejandro, we haven't spoken about corruption. And I think society and academia look at the relationship between business and government as one that somehow is basically corrupt. People are very suspicious of that relationship. And I think they're right. I mean, we have a whole history from import substitution when protection, everything was a little bit, maybe some things have changed now in some cases, but have you had to confront this tradition of suspicion?
Thank you, Carlota. Personally, I have to say that I have to face corruption more when I was in the public sector. I have a couple of histories related with that, with some projects that we know that something strange is going to happen there, and we have to call the authorities and give the respective information related with that. But I feel we are more isolated cases that the regular behavior, but in my personal experience, because I as well I think that corruption is deeply present in Latin American countries, with people who is related with public and working with public resources. But I think Carlota and you guys that particularly I was a person who was not any interest to link it with that kind of behaviors. I'm very honest and with a very strong ethical behavior in my background, in my way that I feel life. And I never, no one asked me to be part of anything, because I think criminals recognize themselves and propose things themselves. And because I never was like this kind of energy, I think, but I think maybe I'm not the common factor. Maybe I was a strange, a different case. And when I see it in this private relationship with companies, I think because I am part of one organization who has a very good reputation in Colombia, who is very, very strong, who is very organized. You don't see that kind of things. Maybe you see it when you see the relation between maybe some private actor with a specific public corrupt functionary, and you see that relation. But when I see it in this kind of organization, the conversation goes beyond that, because we never ask for specific things for a specific company. In fact, it's right in our foundation. We only can promote and propose things who are good for a whole sector, for in general for society, not for any specific company. We don't never as a policy maker to develop a policy who specifically is benefit for one company, because it's not ethical, it's not correct. But you have a point. Is in Latin America, we had a tremendous challenge with corruption in the relation with public and private sector.
Thank you, Alejandro. João, please.
Well, corruption between public and private is not only a privilege of this region. Yeah, I think we can find in other regions the same. But anyway, Alejandro, it was very interesting to hear you, especially because in Brazil there is something similar within the CNI, the Confederação Nacional da Indústria. There is an initiative called Mobilização Empresarial pela Inovação, MEI. They have and this is a group of businessmen that they are mobilized for the cause of innovation, and they have been working for the past 13 years. I was involved in when they were set up. I was in public institutions, and we are supporting that initiative. And so based on this, and now I do consultancy work for them. So based on this and based on what you just told us, my reflections, and there is one final question for you. The first one is that it is interesting to work on a subject like you do, because it's a cause, it's a theme. It's not a sectoral or a representative of a certain regionally or economic activity linked group. It is people that is involved with the nature of, with one activity. So it brings together people and business from different organizations, from different types, sizes, and so on, but they have this cause in mind. And usually they have this cause in mind, not only looking at their business in themselves and the advantage of innovation and so on, but also how they can contribute to the public policy. And you know, just last week, they together with organizations from the scientific sector, they managed to break a veto from our big authorities that they wanted to freeze a science and technology fund. It was a huge victory in the Congress, a political victory. So so it is interesting. The second one is that my feeling is because is that the more that the businessmen are backed up, and this is the place where you young people are coming. The more that these businessmen in initiatives of this sort is backed up by solid research, but that solid research that can communicate with the language of businessmen, it strengthens their cause. So the link between academics and business is the people like Alejandro that takes the word. So it is very important that the communication between academics and business organizations that deal with innovation, it is the channel to go. The question then. Our business community is not innovation minded. Yeah, you just look at the list that you brought in and the nature of the activities that they are involved with, and it's the same in Brazil and other countries. So my question to you is very simple: how hard it is to preach to them about the cause?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, wow. I don't know. No, thank you for your question, for your introduction as well, because as you mentioned, yeah, maybe I have the lucky of, I carry a topic which is innovation, and I carry that topic from academia, from public policy, from business sector, and it's the same topic but only viewed with a different point of view, and that make the thing easy, that you have the responsibility to carry different topics because it's very, very more complex. I don't know, I think we have a lot of work to do with the companies in our countries in order to move on in a different direction to innovation, because the markets, the structural markets of our countries are very protected, and many of the businessmen, when I say many, I say all of them, historically based part of the competitiveness in the lack of innovation, because they were protected, and they create some kind of behavior in the companies. They don't need to innovate, they don't invest in innovation, and in some countries, and so in some sectors in our countries, to still ask to organizations like us, or to still ask to government to go deeply with the protections, to keep them protected for the external competition, to prohibit that foreign competitors came to the local markets. And I think the great revolution is not, of course, it's not open indiscriminately all the markets, but how we can move our companies real to compete in the global markets, in the world, expose them a little more. And I truly believe that innovation is a key tool for them to do that. And that we still have to do in this work with the CEOs at the cultural level, at the training level. I think we have to do a lot of training to the decision makers in the companies, to the real people in companies who took the decisions. And it's not a PhD program, it is not a master program. It's something, of course, short, it's something, a capsule, different, to talk with them about these topics. I think they are very open to talk in small pieces of conversation, no weeks or months, very, very short. And I think it's a huge challenge for us from academia, how we can compact all this knowledge that we have, all this power of the knowledge itself in small things. I think sometimes this is very, when we have this conversation with academy, they say, we just can't do, or we don't want to do it, but I think it's mandatory to do it in order to this relation in the future. I don't answer the question, Joao, but I try to do my best.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Very interesting, Alejandro. The session has been very, very interesting.
One of the
Yes.
initiatives that they do here, and apparently very successful, and then Alejandro, if you want, I can link you up with the people here, is that they do immersion programs to different countries and different experiences. So they take, I don't know, 10, 15 people for 4 or 5 days immersion in Israel and California and China and basically it is for CEO or C-level people,
Okay.
so that they you get they get the knowledge, the direct knowledge of how other countries that have different experiences, how they are doing and facing. Apparently, it's very successful. Now with the pandemic, they are starting to do a digital immersion.
Okay.
So-
Thank you. It will be great. Yeah, actually, in fact, as you mentioned, I'm creating a project. I call it School Andy, and we operatively we work in committees. Committees is a meeting, and we have committees for every topic. Of course, we have the committee of innovation, we have the committee of sustainable, we have the committee of materials, and for different things that matter to the companies. And in that committees, I think it happened 3 things. I say the first one is permanent training. We always invite a person who is expert in some topic trend in this area, some topic trends, and they like a lot to the businessman to be informed to the topic trends. The second one is relationships. They want to be in a group with other guys who are their partners who also work in companies, to ask them how to implement the companies. They feel more comfortable in that space than in a classroom in a university. And the third one are projects. Okay, you mentioned the example. I say, oh, SDGs in innovation. Okay, hey, you guys, how you implement SDG innovation in companies? No, we don't do nothing at all. Okay, create a project to implement SDG in the companies and things like that. These are the 3 main things that happen in that committees. We are creating this project that we call Escuela Andy, Andy School, who going to, it's like a knowledge program management to record all that happen in these committees, to be available permanently for people in the companies who want to have these small trainings, to be these small capsules, these trends, digitally accessible, always online. And I tell you how it's going in the future.
Thank you, Alejandro. And we have a last question, possibly, from Pablo.
Thanks, Arthur, and thanks very much, Alejandro. Very interesting, all the work that you're doing in Colombia. I just have a final, connecting a little bit. I'm clear about the sort of relationship that you have with academia, a little bit with the policy bit. And I was wondering, how's the relationship with the sort of social dimension, the social issues that we have? We know, I mean, Colombia is such an heterogeneous sort of society, and plenty of cultures and plenty of landscapes, and very diverse, heterogeneous sort of consequences. Circumstances. So I was wondering, how does this come into play with sort of this vision of Andy? How do you sort of look for appropriate innovations? How do you look to sort of making this addressing these issues of justice, or issues of sort of local sort of industries and so on and so forth? I was just wondering if you have anything of that in picture. How do you address it, if you have any? Because I think it's not easy as well for many of the business to address these kind of things as well. This social robustness of the approaches, and designing robustly for sort of directly to preserve, culture, and to preserve, relationships, and to preserve the community. Like this, it's not an easy sort of interplay there. I don't know if I'm clear there. I'm sorry, my internet's not good.
No, you're very clear, Pablo, and you maybe you point maybe my major weakness, I say, because maybe I don't have the chance until today to work directly with more social organization. Of course, academia is a social organization. Of course, public sector is a social organization, but I don't have the chance to work more directly with civil society organization, as you mentioned, more in the field, more diverse. But in my defense, I can say that when I was in Conciencia and I was in academia, we try to open the conversation to those different groups, to work with different not traditional actors. Maybe when you are in this topic of science of innovation, you always try to create the conversation with scientifics, with technology developers, with inventors, with researchers. But at the moment I was in Colciencias, it wasn't a tradition to ask to the citizens what they believe or what they think about a policy. And we open the conversation with them. We do some public consultations in the process of the Green Book. We consulted 500,000 citizens. What are the main problems that they believe that science and innovation in a country like Colombia have to resolve, have to solve. And I was very criticized for the scientific classic community. It was a blasphemy. Why I don't ask to them that they know everything, and I ask to the citizen, they don't know what is the north of science. And but I believe, we believe in this approach, that it was very, very important. I think it happened something similar in the private sector. The relation in general with the private sector is with its employees, with the customers, with the owners. And lately, the companies, only the companies who are more mature in his new mindset of sustainable development are more aware to talk to have conversation with all the different groups, all the different sectors. I feel in the beginning they do it like in philanthropic way. They create foundations, saying, okay, we have a community, give them some money for some problems that they decide. But what I start to see in some relevant companies in Colombia, that they really start to, I don't know, it's only for the evolution for the international pressures or the international conversation. They really start to be more involved in real development in communities around the location of some facilities, of some areas. Maybe are some rare cases, but I think it's happening, and I think we have the chance in an organization like Andy, and of course we do it to promote this conversation. Maybe when I don't read our mega, but we in the conversation with the companies, with the 1,500 companies who joined the Andy, was to introduce the concepts of consensus capitalism and something that we want to promote in all the companies who are part of the association. And that's very powerful because, as you know, all these theory and approach of consensus capitalism is this new way of capitalism that the things that are more relevant are the society, are the different groups, not the revenue, not the productivity, no. And it is a powerful declaration because at least it's a political declaration of the main companies of Colombia to say, okay, this is a route, we want to work in that direction, and Andy, we create you for many things, but please develop program initiatives in order we can move that in that direction. It's going to take a lot of time, of course, but we start to work locally. You remember that I am that not only I'm responsible for innovation, I'm responsible for the general conversation with companies at the regional level. And in that aspect, we start to develop a pilot program of consensus capitalism in Antioquia, who is called the Access of Middle Class. In this program is a group of tools for any employee of these companies be underlying the line of poverty. is the goal of this program is all employees of the group of companies who to join the pilot be, as we call in Colombia, middle-class people. It have to be with his own house, with access to education, with equilibrium in his financial statements. It have things of cultural, of mentoring, and access to housing, access to credits. And I think we start, it's a long way, but we start to do some pilots, some experiments, what we call in policy, some policy experiments with companies and how can abort this consensus capitalism approach.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Alejandro. I would like to ask those who want to put the cameras on so we can take a print screen of the meeting so we can have it for the future. And I don't know if Carlota wants to end with some words or...
Well, basically that not only was it very interesting, but this last thing you said is quite amazing. I think if everybody were to try that everywhere, we might actually get to a better society. So it's very, very interesting that you're trying out some pretty advanced things. But it's been, I think this is extremely useful because we generally think of the public sector as something that looks at the world, but we don't look at the public sector from the private sector and imagine what it's like and how it could go. And this means not only business, but society also. I mean, people in general, how do they see the public sector? And therefore, for us to understand that better is very important. And I think this group has been making an effort at getting out of the academic space and trying to see what we learn from those other spaces. And this has been extremely useful. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Carlota, Arthur, Melina, all of you to be here this couple of hours to have this amazing conversation. Well, I hope see you in the future, whatever it is.
Yes, thanks a lot, everyone. Who can we ask to take a print screen? Melina has something to tell us. You just want to take the screen. Okay, thank you, Melina. So,
Rocío, okay.
All right, thanks a lot, Melina. And I can put it here on the chat, I think. It works. Or I can send it over email. You all are in our email list.
You share in social network.
Sure, on Twitter too.
Yeah. I tweet you.
Follow Alejandro. Alejandro has Twitter.
Bye-bye.
You to be on Alex as well afterwards. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care of you all.
Bye.
See you later.
Maggie, no te vayas.
Thank you.